Live from San Diego, California.
We go live to the newsroom with your host
for Nick's Nerd. Before we get in to this week's episode, I just want to I want to talk about the passing of Stan Lee, which happened after I recorded, and the world lost a legend, the comics industry lost an icon. A lot of people's favorite heroes are Stan Lee creations. I mean, Marvel Comics exists because of him. I mean, Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, the Hulk. These are amazing characters that we all know and grew up with, and let's not forget the amazing things he did and contributed, and he was just a amazing human being. He will be missed. Luckily, we'll get a few more cameos of him, so we're not losing him completely just yet. But I'll talk about it more on next week's episode, just about Stan Lee. But I just wanted to call to attention his passing, and I didn't want to just leave anything unsaid. But I will leave it with honestly one of his most powerful quotes, and that is, "With great power comes great responsibility." And if anyone wielded that and lived by that, it was Stan Lee. So let's just have a moment of silence here, but before we get into the meat of this week's episode. Hello and welcome to Nick's Nerd News. Now we get to this week's top stories. Well, everyone, we're back with another week, another episode, and I mean, XO, or Microsoft's extra long Inside Xbox, was this past weekend. They also celebrated all things Xbox in Mexico City, hence the XO title. We also had a bit of news concerning Disney's new streaming service and some other things. But first, I want to get into what, for some reason, I didn't mention at all last week. We finally got the full list of games coming to the PlayStation Classic. Sony's take on the retro console, like Nintendo's NES Classic and Super NES Classic. But the full list was announced, and that was so on top of what we already knew, like Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy VII, and Ridge Racer and Tekken 3. The full list now consists of Battle Arena Toshinden, Cool Borders 2, Destruction Derby, Final Fantasy VII, the original Grand Theft Auto, Intelligent Cube, Jumping Flash, Metal Gear Solid, Mr. Driller, Oddworld Abe's Odyssey, Rayman, Resident Evil Director's Cut, Revelations Persona, so the original Persona game, Ridge Racer Type 4, Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, Siphon Filter, Tekken 3, Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six, Twisted Metal, and Wild Arms. And while I said in the beginning that unless they announced a better games list, I was really not interested in the PlayStation Classic. And they've gone ahead and actually put some things in here that have me extremely interested. For starters, yes, everyone loves, the original Metal Gear, Final Fantasy VII, things like that. But Twisted Metal and Siphon Filter are two games that have me extremely hyped. Siphon Filter is one of the first real shooter action adventure type games that I can really, really remember. It's something I always had fun playing, mainly because it was one of the first games to have a taser, and if you tased one of the bad guys, they'd actually light on fire. And I loved Siphon Filter so much that I ended up getting all three of them that released on the original PlayStation. And I know they had ones come out for PS2, but at that point I'd kind of moved on from games like that in a way. But the original Siphon Filter, I don't even remember if I ever got anywhere really in it. That's one game that always stands out to me forever, essentially. Will always stand out to me for how awesome it was. And that's really cool to me that they're putting a game like this. I still have my original copy of it in my little case of games from the PlayStation era. So, I mean, even if I wanted to, I could just boot up my original PlayStation and play it. But I think I'm really going to look into getting the PlayStation Classic. Also with Twisted Metal, a game that, when you think of Destruction Derby type games, you always think of Twisted Metal, especially with Sweet Tooth in his sadistic ice cream truck with a flaming clown head on top. Like, nothing beats Twisted Metal. Always awesome soundtrack, just extreme premise, and like ridiculous vehicles to roll around in on that game. And this is a really good game to include, because when you think of PlayStation, you think of Twisted Metal, like actual honest to God PlayStation games. You think of Twisted Metal. Rainbow Six is a nice addition, the original, to go along with all this. The original Persona, which is funny because Persona 5 just came out, was it last year? No, that's really cool. Oddworld, I'm kind of surprised at. I've always been a fan of the Oddworld games, even Munch's Odyssey, which was on the original Xbox. That was actually one of the first original Xbox games I ever played. I didn't own it, but I had a friend who had it. Always want to go play it there. People thought I was weird because that game's weird and kind of dumb, but I always had fun with it. But Abe's Odyssey, again, original PlayStation game, little different, not as not like Munch's, but more of a side scroller. And then the original Grand Theft Auto. Now, this was made before they became Rockstar. It was a top-down view game, and was a little different than what you'd normally expect from Grand Theft Auto. So don't go in here expecting it to be like what you know of Grand Theft Auto. It's completely different. Again, it's top down. It wasn't until Grand Theft Auto 3 that we actually had the polygon effects, if you will. So don't go in there thinking it's going to be 3D open world. It's not. It's really not. But again, this is an awesome lineup. That's coming out in December for $100. It's still pre-orderable from a lot of places. Oh, also Cool Borders 2. I guess I thought I had Cool Borders 2, but I guess I didn't. It's actually, I had Cool Borders 3 because I just remember 989 Studios, who also did Siphon Filter, but 989 Studios, former San Diego game developer for Sony, but still, Cool Borders 2, awesome game for snowboarding enthusiasts if you like that. Different. It pretty much was like the original snowboarding game. Well, the second one at least, because, Cool Borders 2. Also, as I mentioned earlier, Microsoft had their XO18 conference, which is pretty much just like a celebration of all things Xbox. And they used their monthly Inside Xbox show kind of as a platform. This time it was 2 hours, their longest show, and they actually announced a whole lot of different things on top of some other previously known things. For starters, we got the release date for the new Forza DLC, which is coming in December. It's called Fortune Island. It will add new weather effects like thunder and lightning and the Aurora Borealis. It's going to have their longest mountain track, mountain switchback track, which will be awesome for drifting. A lot of different cliffside races, things like that. So I'm sure having the multiple seasons and things like that will really shake things up for this new DLC that's coming. Also had some news in regards to Game Pass. 16 new games are going to Game Pass, which is, Microsoft's monthly game streaming service, essentially game streaming, $10 a month. They're doing a deal right now that if you've never signed up for Game Pass before, through the end of the holidays, you can actually get it your first month for $1. It's got already over 100 games, including every new Microsoft launch title on day of release. But they actually added 6 games to that list. So PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds will be there starting this week. By the time this is published, it will already be up there. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, which is from the newly acquired Microsoft studio Ninja Theory, will be on Game Pass starting December 17th. The original Ori and the Blind Forest will be there on the 20th of December. Ori and the Will of the Wisps, the sequel to that game, will be their launch day next year. Kingdom 2 Crowns will be available next December. Aftercharge in January. Supermarket Shriek sometime next year. Void Bastards sometime next year. Pathologic 2 and Secret Neighbor and The Good Life, no dates. Thief of Thieves available now. Mutant Year Zero Road to Eden, which is more of like a turn-based tabletop game that's been made into a game, is available now. MXGP3 available on the 22nd of this month. Agents of Mayhem and Thomas Was Alone will also be available on those days. Hell, Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice alone is worth it, if not PUBG, plus all the other games. Hellblade is supposed to be an amazing game. It finally came to Xbox this year after a year of exclusivity on PlayStation 4, but that's something that's pretty awesome. Also, Crackdown 3 is finally coming out. It has an official release date of February 15th. It came with a new trailer, two new trailers actually, one that was just full of Terry Crews goodness, and the other for their new multiplayer system, which, again, Crackdown 3 will be available in Game Pass at launch as well, but the multiplayer looks actually really cool. It's 5-on-5 in a completely 100% destructible environment. So that means no two games will play the same. I mean, some people will figure out a way to do some things, and it might get that way eventually, but in the beginning, no two things will play the same, because in a fully destructible environment, especially with Crackdown's crazy antics, you can expect a whole lot of different games and experiences to be had in multiplayer alone. I'm very excited for this. I loved the first two games. I know a lot of people didn't like the second one. I liked it a lot just because it upped the ante on the zaniness of the first one. So, I mean, there's a lot going on there. What's this? All of the Final Fantasy 13 games will be backwards compatible, as well as the official announcement of all those other Final Fantasy games that were announced at that Switch thing a couple weeks back. Those are coming next year. We got some new trailers for Kingdom Hearts 3 that showed off some Winnie the Pooh-inspired mini-games. A new trailer for Just Cause 4, as well as the announced that the tornado that was shown off will actually be part of the game all the time, just on different parts of the map. And also, every weapon has like a secondary fire option that they can't talk about just yet. So that's going to make that game be completely ridiculous. But some of the bigger news, Microsoft and Obsidian have officially joined together. Obsidian, famous for making the Pillars of Eternity games, as well as Fallout New Vegas and Knights of the Old Republic 2. Microsoft has said that they will allow them to act independently, and all they did was buy them and give them financial support. This isn't something where they're going to come in and say, you have to do this or you have to do that. And also with that, the studio In Exile, which is another RPG maker, was purchased or has joined the Microsoft Studios fold. And again, Microsoft said they're going to keep them independent. They're not going to merge them the two of them together, even though they make similar games. And a lot of the staff worked together at an older studio previously. But these are two great studios joining the Microsoft fold. And keyboard and mouse support, which has been mulled over the last year or so, is finally coming. I know they started it with War. What was it? Was it Warframe? Came to Warframe a couple weeks back in kind of a beta. Starting November 14th, which this week, day of publishing usually, Wednesdays, 14 titles will have mouse and keyboard support. They include Bomber Crew, Warface, Children of Morta, Minion Master, DayZ, Warframe, as always, that already had it, Deep Rock Galactic, Warhammer Vermintide 2, Moonlighter, Wargroove, Vigor, War Thunder, X-Morph Defense, and Fortnite. And Fortnite players can be assured that if you are playing with mouse and keyboard, you will only be matched up with mouse and keyboard players. You will not be matched up with controller players, as that is a bit of contention, and obviously people playing on mouse and keyboard will play a lot better and have an advantage over standard controller players. But on top of that, Razer, the great peripheral maker, announced that they will be the official partner of Microsoft for mouse and keyboard support, and they are making the first official keyboard, mechanical keyboard for a console, built for a console from the ground up. And while they didn't have anything to show off just yet, they said to check back in for CES in January, which is the Consumer Electronics Show where a lot of new technology is always announced. That we'll know more then. And then finally, Microsoft is bringing back with ID at Xbox, which is kind of like their indie game place. Like on the 360, where they had the Xbox Live Arcade and the always loved Summer of Arcade, The Winter of Arcade is coming back this year. It's kind of a spin on Summer of Arcade, which means that you'll get like, I think it's discounts, or like they'll heavily favor and push certain indie games to the forefront so people can really find awesome gems like that. But that's it from XO18. Some big things. What was really interesting is multiple times throughout the broadcast, they mentioned to check back December 6th, I think it is, for the Game Awards. The Game Awards, always been a great place for big new announcements, hosted by Jeff Keighley, and really great thing for the industry. But the Game Awards was heavily pushed, so it will be interesting to see what might get announced at that night. In more awesome news, if you are a Switch player and still holding on to your original GameCube controller for Super Smash Ultimate, for Super Smash games in general, 8-Bit Do, I think that's how you say their name, is making a wireless adapter that works for all old Nintendo controllers, actually, to allow you the use of your old GameCube controllers. It actually comes out December 7th, just in time for Super Smash Ultimate. And also, on top of that, YouTube is now available on the Nintendo Switch. So if you didn't know that, now you do. Awesome news for Switch owners. Spider-Man second DLC, which is called Turf Wars, will be out November 24th. And it was noted that you'll get to face up with one of Superman's big villains, Hammerhead. So that's interesting. Let me see here. Prima Games. If any of you have ever purchased a strategy guide in the past, it was more than likely made by Prima Games, industry stalwart for, over 20 years now, announced that they will be shutting down by the spring of next year. And while I only own probably a handful of strategy guides, mostly being some of the Pokemon games, both Red Deads, and some others, now that I think about it, the new Red Dead 2 one isn't even a Prima Games. It's actually made by Rockstar. So that's anyway. It's almost interesting that with the rise of the internet, you've also seen the collapse of the strategy guide market, because pretty much every game you can just get info on the internet. You can go find walkthroughs on YouTube. I mean, hell, the only reason I bought the Red Dead one was because there was some awesome artwork in it, and I knew not all that stuff would be online right away that I might need to get up and running in the game. But again, while this is a sad thing, I think it's mainly has to come down to the numbers, and people probably just were not buying strategy guides anymore. I would remember just seeing stacks of them at GameStop and different stores. So again, with the internet and different wikias that people make online, like a Wikipedia, but for games, and YouTube, just doesn't make sense anymore. But speaking of Red Dead, I'm still having so much fun. It's the only game I'm playing right now. I of course want to beat that before I get into anything else. But some awesome news out of Rockstar. They've sold through 17 million copies, or sold in, which means they've sold 17 million copies to retailers, which is actually really funny because that's more in 8 days than the original did in its first 8 years. So it's telling that this game is very popular and people love it. Probably going to be the best-selling game of the year, which in the last 10 years or so, the best-selling games have always been Call of Duty unless a Rockstar game is released. They also said that there will be the beta for Red Dead Online should be out by the end of this month, end of November. But I'm ready to give, like I said, I'm not 100% done, but if I were to score it now, 10 out of 10. And there's no question. 10 out of 10, amazing story, having so much fun with it. I'm in Chapter 5. Pretty much end of Chapter 5, so I'm about to get to the final chapter before the 2 epilogues. So there's that. But I will say one of the best missions I've played so far was in it straddles Chapter 5, Chapter 6, and it's a mission with Sadie Adler. I'm not gonna give too many spoilers because I know a lot of people still haven't gotten there yet, but I'm gonna give minor spoilers. I mean, the game's been out almost 3 weeks. I can talk about this stuff. But there's a mission with Sadie Adler from St. Denis, and you get to ride a hot air balloon, and there's a sequence near the end of the mission where you have to snipe different members of the O'Driscoll's gang riding on horseback chasing Sadie while you're in the hot air balloon. And honestly, that's been my favorite mission so far. It's different than what you'd get in normal games. It's not something you'd expect out of a game that takes place in 1899 where you're in a flying vehicle taking out men on the ground. And it just, like I said, completely unexpected, so much fun. Make sure you have enough Deadeye for that. Otherwise, you might be struggling a bit if you haven't leveled up some of your skills by the time you get there. To kind of round out some gaming news, Sony actually released a new PS4 Pro without really telling anyone. It was found by Digital Foundry, who are the guys at Eurogamer that do a lot of tech tests and graphics comparisons and things like this. So this is actually the third version. It's about 2 to 3 decibels lower than last year's model, but in terms of from the original, it's actually 6 to 7 decibels quieter than the original version of the PS4 Pro. Still a few decibels louder than the Xbox One X. They gave it the distinction of being a quiet home console or something like that, but it's funny because I still hear people talking about playing like God of War, Red Dead 2, other games, and it sounds like I read these comments online, even from people in the game journalism business, talking about how their PS4 Pro sounds like it's about to take off for outer space. But no, this is a good thing because now people don't have to wear earmuffs to play graphically challenging games. But if you don't already have a PS4 Pro, no word on if there's a way to update your original. But it looks like it has to do with changing out they used a different power cable for the new ones. It's they switched to using like that figure 8 shape like all the consoles use nowadays instead of like a 3-pronged one, and it had to do, it was related to that. That's what was causing the breakdown. But that's it for gaming news this week. Let's kind of move on to TV. Here's something you probably won't hear me talk about a whole lot, just because I know a lot of people are fans. I'm not really, but I know it's a big deal. If you're unaware, Rick Grimes, who most people just know anyway in pop culture because there were a lot of memes about him from The Walking Dead and things like that. It was his last episode of the show last week, but they're actually going to do multiple TV films related to his story on AMC to kind of flesh that out, so that's interesting. A lot of people thought he was just leaving the show in general. Speaking of AMC shows, they're looking to make a feature film for Breaking Bad. No word on that yet or how that will work, considering Walter White is dead. Spoiler alert. But for AMC shows, that's a lot of good news for people fans of those shows. Brooklyn Nine-Nine has gotten an official release date. Do you call it a release date or premiere date for the 6th season, which is its first season on NBC? That's going to start January 10th at 9 p.m. That's a Thursday. Cannot fucking wait for that. 9-9. In terms of HBO shows, we got some news about that Watchmen show that I can't wait for. Watchmen, I love the movie. The graphic novel is probably hands down one of the best graphic novels of all time. If you think that's wrong, you can go fuck yourself, really, because you're just going against the grain of pretty much everyone. I mean, colleges use it in English classes to teach. That's how fucking good it is. But the HBO adaptation from Damon Lindelof, I remember I mentioned a while back that Jeremy Irons had been cast on the show. It's being reported that he's actually going to be playing an older version of Adrian Veidt, or Ozymandias, who was sort of the... I don't really want to call him a villain in the original. He's not really a villain. He's not really a bad guy. He's just someone who is trying to save the world, in essence, I guess you could say. Which makes sense that they'd have an older one, because it is taking place about 10 years or more after the end of the original graphic novel, which would put it in around 95 or so. And if you've read or watched the movie, you'd understand that Veidt really isn't a bad guy, more or less. But, I mean, it's conflicting. I'll say that. It's conflicting to see how they're going to portray him in this show. In sad news, The filming location for Westworld, also known as Paramount Ranch, which is where they filmed a lot of movies and westerns, was burnt down this weekend in the Woolsey fire, which is currently ravaging Thousand Oaks and the surrounding area. And it's unfortunate that we have to have forest fires like this, and thoughts and prayers out to all those who've lost their homes and had to evacuate and things like that. But it's unfortunate that something like this. Luckily, Westworld 3 was not filming at the time. They didn't have to evacuate the cast or anything like that. But that sadly that burnt down a piece of Hollywood history is lost forever, essentially. And it was in a national park, so it was open to the public to see year round, and we've lost something great. Also, in terms of the Arrowverse this week, Legends of Tomorrow, always great. It was funny as always. But Arrow, I want to talk about Arrow for a second. Finally got Oliver interacting with the prison psychiatrist who was pretty much experimenting on Oliver in a way that I don't think is legal, even for people who get put in like the next level of confinement. But he's been kind of trying to I don't know, coax Oliver into telling the truth and giving up things he probably wouldn't normally give up. But in my viewing, I felt it was really odd. I mean, they probably couldn't, but I felt that they should have found a way to get Hugo Strange for this. And this really, I normally would never say this, but this really brings it to be the discount Batman show that it kind of gets the criticism for being. And without having Hugo Strange, who's plagued pretty much every DC villain at this point in the comics, it's odd they wouldn't do it. I know they're probably just trying not to confuse people, especially since Hugo Strange was such a big part of Gotham for so long, the show Gotham. But I really felt that it was very important to have someone like Hugo Strange take part in this. And you don't have to work him up to be a major villain or anything like that, because he wasn't always and doesn't need to be a major villain right away. But for the storyline they're telling in prison right now with Oliver, it would benefit them to have a character like that. And I even tweeted this. Like, I don't normally tweet at actors or shows and things like this. And I'm like, I think you guys dropped the ball here and really should have gotten Hugo Strange, because that's someone that this would work perfectly for, because he's the one who tries to understand heroes and why they're doing things and stuff like that. So that's my only complaint with Arrow's episode this week. But in terms of ever expanding news of the crossover, looks like Psycho Pirate has been cast. And while they already did the Crisis on Infinite Earths storyline, and I don't know why Elseworlds is being the place where all the elements of the real Crisis storyline are unfolding, with the Monitor and things like this. The Psycho Pirate, if you don't know, is one of the only people to remember the previous DC universes and in how they were supposed to be, in pretty much every DC crossover event in the comics. They'll have to play this the right way. The Psycho Pirate is a villain that can kind of force you to feel only one emotion and take all the others away. And that's probably, this explains actually that picture that came out of Black Suit Superman being like a villain type. So this might play into that. I'll be excited to see how they work around this in just 3 episodes, since they're not using Legends of Tomorrow this year. In some crazy fucking news, Disney Plus, which is now the name for Disney's streaming service, which is set to launch next year, we are getting not 1, but 2 Star Wars shows now after The Mandalorian. Now we're getting a Rogue One prequel show starring Diego Luna as Cassian Andor, and it will follow him as a spy in the Rebel Alliance, leading up to the events of Rogue One. No word on if it's going to be more adult-oriented or things like that. Definitely can't be for kids, because Cassian talks about doing things that weren't necessarily clear-cut, cut and dry, and some backdoor things for the the rebellion, as we saw in the opening of Rogue One. Also, on top of that, the Loki show is official, and it will star Tom Hiddleston, but that's all we know. It's just gonna star Tom Hiddleston as Loki. No word yet on both shows, if they're going to be, how long they're going to be, how many episodes, things like this. So, going back a second though to the Cassian Andor show, please, for all that is mighty, that's not how you say that, but please, if there is something out there listening and answers prayers, please get Alan Tudyk back as K2SO, because K2SO was just, oh man, he was such a delight in Rogue One, and such a beautiful character, and just was a charm to be around, I'm sure. But please get Alan Tudyk back to play K2SO in the show, or at least explain how Cassian got K2SO, because that would be an interesting story. In terms of rumors, though, about this streaming service, looks like Disney's looking to start a show based around the Winter Soldier and the Falcon, like in a team-up buddy cop show and they're trying to get Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan back. Did I talk about this last week? I think I did. I can't remember, but remind me if I'm wrong. But that is happening. Disney Plus, look for it later next year. Also, in terms of streaming, Netflix is actually in talks, or has announced, actually, I should say, they announced 5 new anime shows, and one of them is actually going to be based on Pacific Rim, the awesome Kaiju Rock'em Sock'em Robots movie, which I really love, the Guillermo del Toro-led series. No word on if he's going to be involved at all. As well as a anime based on Altered Carbon. Altered Carbon was an awesome sci-fi show they started. I've only seen a couple episodes. I really like it. Haven't had a chance to finish it yet, but they're working on season 2 of that show right now, and now they're going to get an anime based on the universe of Altered Carbon. But that's it for movies. TVs. Let's move on to movies here. The PG-13 rated re-edited Deadpool that is now coming out in December will only run for about 14 days, and it's going to be called Once Upon a Deadpool. So it will release December 12th and leave theaters on Christmas Eve. Most of you might know by now, it's been re-edited to have a PG-13 rating. Ryan Reynolds actually came in to do reshoots where Fred Savage is playing his character from A Princess Bride. The little kid in the bed. But what's really nice, and it's going to be a little bit of a retelling of Deadpool 2. But what's nice about this, that $1 of each ticket sold is actually going to go to the charity Fuck Cancer. So it is for a good cause. Definitely go see Deadpool 2 if you haven't already. If the language and the violence is what kept you out, maybe not the language because you're listening to this show, but if the over-the-top violence and blood and gore is what kept you from seeing it the first time, this PG-13 version will be good to go see, and at least some of it is going to a good cause. So I really urge you to check that out, because I love Deadpool 2, and Fred Savage being read the story of Deadpool 2 will be an awesome change. I know we reported a few weeks back about Kingsman 3 getting some new stars, but it turns out it's actually not going to be Kingsman 3, but actually a prequel to the original Kingsman movie. And that was confirmed when Taron Egerton came out and said that he's not going to be in the movie, which kind of surprised a lot of people. And then it was clarified that this is actually not going to be Kingsman 3, but actually a prequel taking place around 1918 when the Kingsman started. So I know that starts filming in the new year. And I really enjoyed the first two. They're hilarious. They turn the whole British spy genre on its head. They don't fall into regular tropes. Hell, they killed off most of the cast of the first movie in the first 10 minutes of the second one. So they do not like to stick to what's standard. We got some awesome Aquaman posters that were released that were very vibrant, very colorful. Not what you'd expect for standard DC EU fare or Worlds of DC, whatever the fuck they're calling it nowadays. But it was, and we actually got to see a character that we hadn't really seen before, and that's Willem Dafoe's Nudius Volko, which is like Aquaman's right-hand man, his confidant in Atlantis. But these posters showed off a lot of cool characters. Of course, Aquaman in his traditional comics-accurate costume, the orange and green. It showed off Mira, Queen Atlanta, played by Nicole Kidman, King Nereus, played by Dolph Lundgren, King Orm, who is Aquaman's brother, half-brother, I should say, and Volko, of course, and an awesome shot of Black Manta. So, a couple weeks out from that movie. Can't fucking wait for that. James Wan, I think, has got a real winner on his hands here. In terms of Universal's Illumination Entertainment, apparently the Super Mario Brothers is on the fast track, is at the top of the list, and they are shooting for a 2022 release. So we're still about 4 years out from that Super Mario movie actually coming out. It takes a long time to animate those movies, surprisingly. And in some news that I don't particularly like, or don't understand why, but speaking of Illumination Entertainment and Universal, the person who founded Illumination was brought on with Universal when they purchased DreamWorks to kind of lead like the animation studios together, and it looks like now he's moving over to DreamWorks, and they're looking to reboot the Shrek franchise. You heard that right, folks. Reboot the Shrek franchise. And it wouldn't be a full reboot because they want to keep Mike Myers as Shrek, Antonio Banderas as Puss in Boots, and Eddie Murphy as Donkey. Mind you, no mention of Cameron Diaz as oh God, what's her name? Fiona. Yeah. Why the fuck are they doing this? Come on. The original Shrek movie is amazing. Shrek 2, great. I understand that you really like Puss in Boots and the whole Shrek, the idea of Shrek. And I understand that, Shrek the 4th did not do very well. I understand these things. But why, God, why do we need to do like a soft reboot of Shrek? I don't understand this. I mean, I'm a little happy because they want to make sure Mike Myers is involved as Shrek, because honestly at this point, how can you like recast him? But damn, put this on the pile of why the fuck are they doing that? But speaking of Mike Myers, he said in an interview recently that he is currently writing Austin Powers 4, which, yeah baby, yeah, I'm very excited for. Love the Austin Powers movies. Love them to death. Got some news out of Disney for Avengers 4. The current runtime is around 3 hours. This is obviously, we're months away from this movie, so that could change. It could go up. It could go down. We don't really know. Chalk that up to not going to stay permanent. But in terms of that, Disney is actually pushing Infinity War for now 11 Oscar categories on their For Your Consideration website, which kind of goes also with how they are pushing Black Panther right now for they're pushing Black Panther for 16 categories, but Infinity War, obviously best special effects and all that, but also best director for the Russo brothers. So don't know what's going on with that. And in terms of wholly ridiculous rumor that I shouldn't even be bothering to give any kind of time to, it looks like that there was a rumor floating around that Matt Smith, who recently joined Star Wars Episode 9, is going to be playing a young Palpatine in the movie. Now, this is a ridiculous thing that is just unreal. I mean, really. First off, we've only just added flashbacks to the whole Star Wars idea in Last Jedi. And Matt Smith, who's famous for playing the 12th Doctor, I think, before Capaldi, but after, can't think of his name. But he doesn't even look like Ian McDiarmid. Like, even a young Ian McDiarmid, he doesn't look like. But a young Palpatine? come on, everyone hates the clone Palpatine saga from the old expanded universe. Why? Please don't do a flashback. Please don't do a clone of Palpatine. I just... And then there's this other ridiculous rumor flying around that they're trying to resurrect Padme and go to Vader's castle on Mustafar. I mean, is this really where you want to go, JJ? People already gave you shit for just rehashing Episode 4, A New Hope. People are pissed at Rian Johnson. Like, is this really the place you want to go, JJ? I don't think so. I don't think that's where you're planning on going. I don't think that's where Colin Trevorrow was going either before he got canned. Just please don't have a young Palpatine. Please, please, God, do not do this. Let Matt Smith play some other amazing Imperial figure or First Order figure or someone in the New Republic. That's more better suited to what he can do. Please do not have him playing a young Palpatine. That would just be a kick in the balls to a lot of Star Wars fans and to the whole story of Star Wars in general. I don't even know why I gave that rumor the time of day. But that's it for this week. Not really a slow week, but not really a whole lot of stuff this week either. And one more kind of thing. If you're unaware, DC's Black Label, which is kind of their edgy, more adult-oriented comics label. You know, they did Batman White Knight, where Batman is the villain and the Joker is like the good guy, where they had like a sex scene with the Joker and Harley Quinn. They had Batman Damned, where we got to see Bruce Wayne's junk for the first time. But no, and some other stuff that's still yet to come out. But they're announcing that they're expanding by adding at least 23 reprints, which includes All-Star Superman, Watchmen, which will be getting a new trade paperback and a new hardcover with a new cover design. Kingdom Come, which I'm sure most people are familiar with the art designed by Alex Ross. I'm sure everyone's seen that picture of like the Justice League with like the older Superman with the black logo and the gray hair streaks. All-Star Batman and Robin, and all the Dark Knight books by Frank Miller. So Dark Knight Rises, Dark Knight Strikes Again, or not Dark Knight Rises, Dark Knight Returns, Dark Knight Strikes Again, and The Dark Knight The Master Race, which actually just finished recently. And even The Killing Joke. So that's interesting. No word yet on if they're going to find old art and uncensor things on top of that. But really cool thing for DC's Black Label, if you're interested in that and are a collector like me and like to own several copies of famous works. But that is it for Nick's Nerd News. And it's another week, an episode in the books. As always, you can find me on Spotify, iTunes, and Google Play. I'm your host, Nick. You can follow me on Instagram at nix.nerd.news. You can follow me on Twitter at nixnerdnews. And working on a website, so you guys will have a landing page for all things considered. And, I'm going to start doing some more written things, not just going to be vocal all the time. Got a lot of things in the works, I'll say that. And hoping to get more people on. Matt wants to be a regular guest. I know a lot of people like listening and getting some other opinions on the show. So that's it's going to start soon. And, as always, hey, fuck the haters, right? Just don't let them get you down. Do your own thing, do what makes you happy. Live your own damn life, because that's how I live mine, and it's how I expect you to live yours. All right, friends? Well, I will catch you on the flip side. Have a good week.